Are you working harder on your job than you are on yourself? Because, I mean, if you are, you're kind of playing a game designed to keep you exactly where you are.
Yeah, that is a pretty uncomfortable question to start with, but it is so necessary.
Right. I think it hits a nerve for a lot of people. Today, we are doing a deep dive into some core excerpts from Jim Rohn's work, specifically his concepts around developing value, personal responsibility, and the natural seasons of life.
And this material, it really requires tearing down the fundamental assumptions most of us carry into the marketplace. Because, we are conditioned from day one to have this extraction-based mindset.
Oh, for sure. Like you sit down at a new desk and your first thought is automatically, what am I getting here?
Exactly. What is the immediate yield on my time?
Which is basically the classic hourly wage mindset. I surrender an hour of my life and you surrender $20.
Right.
Clean trade, right.
It is clean, but it is a massive trap. The premise we are unpacking today argues that asking, what am I getting, is just the wrong focal point entirely.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if that's the wrong question, what is the right one?
The operative question, the one that actually drives compounding returns over your life, is what am I becoming?
Wow. What am I becoming? That is a huge shift.
It is, because true sustainable wealth, whether we are talking about financial, social, or intellectual capital, it isn't something you can just acquire and hold on to if your internal capacity hasn't grown to match it.
Right, it's not a backpack you just put on. It has to be built into the architecture of who you are.
Precisely.
But, that sounds incredibly aspirational. Let's try to ground this in the mechanics of the real world, because there is this economic puzzle in the source material that just strips away all the usual excuses we use.
Yeah, the identical employee scenario. It is brilliant.
It really is. So picture this scenario for a second. You have two people working for the exact same company.
Let's lay out the variables here.
Right, so they are the same age. They graduated from the same university with the exact same degree. They live in the same zip code. They drive the exact same route to work. And they sit in the exact same morning traffic.
Operating under the exact same corporate policies, selling the exact same products.
Yes. Everything on the spreadsheet is completely identical. Yet at the end of the year, one person makes $50,000 and the other person makes $100,000. The puzzle is why. How does the math work there?
Well, we first have to look at what people normally blame when they see a disparity like that. When someone is outperforming us by a factor of 2, our immediate psychological defense mechanism kicks in.
Oh, totally. We tell ourselves, oh, they just have a better territory, or they have a wealthy uncle who made a phone call.
Right, or the boss just likes them more. It is a protective reflex for our ego. But this specific scenario controls for all of those external variances. The products are fixed. The market is fixed. The traffic is fixed.
Even the time is fixed. And that's the variable we usually cling to the hardest. We say, well, they must just be working more hours.
But in this thought experiment, they aren't. They both have the exact same 24 hours in a day, and they both clock the same 8 hours at the desk. You literally cannot petition physics to grant you a 25-hour day.
You really can't. And that fixed constraint of time forces us to confront how compensation actually works.
Yes. If time is a static constant, what is the dynamic variable altering the output? The answer is value. We all operate under this shared hallucination that we are paid for our time.
Wait, really? But we log hours. We literally punch clocks.
I know, but we aren't paid for time.
Yeah.
Time is merely the medium in which value is delivered. The marketplace is honestly entirely indifferent to your time.
That is a really tough pill to swallow when you physically have to sit there and log your hours into a software system every Friday.
The time clock is just an administrative convenience. It is a metric for attendance, not a metric for worth. The market pays for the problem you solve or the friction you remove during that captured time.
Okay, I was trying to visualize this earlier, and I thought about it like a computer sitting on a desk.
I like this analogy, yeah.
Right, so you can leave that laptop powered on for 24 hours straight. The screen is glowing, the fan is spinning, it is consuming electricity. That represents the time.
Sure.
But if it is just sitting there idling on the desktop, it isn't executing any useful work. Simply leaving the machine turned on for a longer duration doesn't yield a better computational result.
Exactly. It's just burning energy.
But if you take a fraction of that time to, say, upgrade its processing software or train a new language model on its hard drive, suddenly, in the exact same 1-hour window, it can process massive data sets.
It can render 3D environments, solve complex equations.
Yes, you didn't give the machine more time. You increased the density of what it could accomplish within that time. You upgraded its capabilities.
And, the hardest part about upgrading that software is that the computer actually has to go offline to do it.
Oh, wow. That's a great point.
It requires an intentional period of downtime where it isn't producing anything at all. And people resist this internal development because they're terrified of taking themselves offline.
They don't want to sacrifice a weekend or spend 2 hours reading an evening instead of, streaming a show.
Right. They're obsessed with keeping the machine running, even if it is running on completely obsolete software.
That shift from hourly wage thinking to value creation thinking is just massive. Hourly wage thinking is inherently passive. Like, I sit in the chair, therefore I am owed the money.
While value creation thinking is aggressive, it asks, how can I engineer the output of my next hour to be worth 3 times what my last hour was worth?
It totally removes the ceiling on your potential, which is intoxicating. But it also removes your safety net, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
You can no longer shrug and say, well, I put in my 40 hours. The lack of progress is the company's fault. If you want to double your income, you have to double your value.
You have to become a completely different, more potent entity in the marketplace. And that actually leads us perfectly into this concept of the fallacy of pursuit.
Yes, the fallacy of pursuit. This is crucial.
Because we are constantly bombarded with this hustle culture rhetoric, right? It tells us we have to chase success, run it down, hunt it.
But the philosophy we are looking at completely flips that on its head. It describes success not as prey to be hunted, but as something you attract.
Success is looking for a good place to stay. I love that phrasing.
It is a brilliant version. Think about it. If you view success as something you have to chase, you are perpetually in a state of deficit.
You're the predator, and success is constantly running away from you.
Exactly. But if success is looking for a good place to stay, your entire operational strategy has to shift from external pursuit to internal construction.
I love the imagery there. It's like success is this weary, wealthy traveler walking down a long street of hotels. They are looking for the best accommodations.
The strongest foundation, the best service.
Right. Your job isn't to run down the street and tackle the traveler. Your job is to build a 5-star hotel on the inside so that when success walks by, it naturally wants to check in and stick around.
And what is deeply uncomfortable about building that 5-star hotel on the inside is that for a really long time, the rooms are going to be completely empty.
Oh, that's so true.
You are doing all this rigorous internal work, reading, refining your communication, analyzing your emotional reactivity, and from the outside, nobody sees the success yet.
The traveler hasn't arrived.
Right. And that is exactly where most people abandon the construction. They want the traveler to check in before they have even finished framing the walls.
Wait, let me push back on this a bit, though, because I struggle with this idea sometimes.
Go ahead.
If we are saying success is purely about internal value, aren't we kind of ignoring the reality of systemic ceilings?
How do you mean?
Like, you can have the most beautiful, upgraded internal hotel in the world, but if you're zoned in a terrible neighborhood, meaning you're in a stagnant industry, or working for a truly toxic boss, nobody is checking in.
That is a very fair critique.
So does this framework account for literal external disadvantages? Like, should you just sit there and try to attract a raise from a boss who actively exploits you?
That is the exact friction point of this philosophy. And look, the framework doesn't suggest that systemic barriers don't exist or that toxic environments are just delusions.
Okay, good, because they definitely exist.
What it addresses, though, is your locus of leverage. If you realize your boss is never going to recognize your value, your first instinct is usually to try and manipulate or work on the boss.
Right, you demand more. You threaten to strike or quit.
Exactly. But the psychology of a corporate structure is that they don't behave irrationally just because you ask nicely. If you don't possess the underlying leverage, meaning your value is so high that your absence would cause catastrophic pain to the company, your demands are hollow.
Yeah, playing the demand game without the value to back it up just leads to a war of attrition.
Let's look at the macroeconomics of demanding more money without increasing your value. Let's say you fight and you manage to force a 10% wage increase out of your employer.
Okay, so you win the battle.
You win the battle. But the fiat currency system you operate within is currently experiencing 12% inflation. Your purchasing power has still decreased by 2%.
So the inflation treadmill always eventually outpaces the demand game.
Always. Demanding more might be a tactical necessity for baseline survival in a flawed system, but it is not the mechanism for wealth creation. Wealth creation demands a disproportionate increase in performance.
So if we aren't demanding it and we aren't chasing it, what are the actual mechanics of becoming this person? How do we actually lay the bricks for this internal hotel?
Well, the material gets incredibly granular here. It doesn't just offer broad platitudes.
Right, no, just believe in yourself, Fluff. It points to micro habits, and the very first one it highlights is, and this blew my mind, developing an above average handshake.
Which I know sounds almost comically trivial to a modern ear.
It really does. You hear that and think, wait, my grip strength is going to double my salary. Are you kidding me?
But when you dig into the psychology of it, the handshake is a proxy for presence.
It is pure neurological signaling, isn't it?
It is a primate threat assessment ritual. When you meet someone and shake their hand, the amygdala in the other person's brain is instantaneously processing your grip.
It's checking your eye contact, your micro expressions.
Exactly. It's determining if you are competent, confident, and trustworthy. If you offer a weak, distracted, or indifferent handshake, you are signaling a profound lack of intentionality.
You are broadcasting that you lack the discipline to master even the most foundational point of human contact.
It shows you haven't done the internal work.
And the list of these micro habits just goes on. It talks about developing an above average smile, an above average level of excitement, an above average interest in other people.
And notice that none of these require a master's degree in finance.
No, you don't need a certificate to cultivate an intense, genuine curiosity about the person sitting across from you. But when you stack these micro habits, they fundamentally alter your internal architecture.
They change the frequency you emit into the marketplace. And the brutal truth observed here is that one of the most agonizing experiences in life is looking for an above-average job with above-average pay while stubbornly refusing to become an above-average person.
Oof. That is a mathematical impossibility that just leads to perpetual resentment.
You are essentially demanding a premium harvest while planting mediocre seeds.
Which brings us perfectly to the millionaire paradox. This is the ultimate proof of why the internal upgrade is the only thing that actually matters.
Yes, the thought experiment here is so revealing.
It is simple. If someone hands you $1 million, you had better become a millionaire quickly on the inside or the money will evaporate.
And we see the empirical evidence for this constantly in the real world.
Right. Lottery winners, inheritors of sudden wealth, young athletes signing massive rookie contracts.
The capital frequently disappears within a few years. And people look at that and think, oh, it's just a matter of bad budgeting.
But it isn't, is it?
No, it's a system rejection.
A system rejection. I love that term. Explain that a bit more.
Well, wealth is not just physical cash. Wealth is the byproduct of a specific set of psychological systems: risk assessment, delayed gratification, capital allocation, emotional regulation.
So if a person hasn't built those neural pathways, if they haven't written the internal software for delayed gratification.
Exactly. A sudden influx of $1 million acts like a virus to their current operating system. Their baseline comfort level is rooted in scarcity.
So their subconscious literally goes to work spending, squandering, and mismanaging that money to return their environment to the baseline state their internal software actually knows how to process.
Yes. The hotel isn't built to hold the guests, so the guests are evicted.
That is fascinating. The money actually causes a system crash, and the philosophy takes this to its absolute logical extreme.
Right, the global redistribution thought experiment.
Yes. It posits that if you took all the wealth in the world, centralized it, and then distributed it equally among every single person on the planet.
Within a few short years, the majority of that wealth would end up right back in the exact same pockets it started in.
Which is wild to think about, but makes total sense, because the physical currency would inevitably flow toward the individuals who possess the internal systems to manage and compound it.
You can redistribute the paper all you want, but you cannot redistribute internal value creation skills. The market is relentlessly efficient at routing resources to those who have the capacity to multiply them.
Which means, if you want your external reality to change, your internal reality has to change first. You have to take complete ownership of the system.
And that brings us to what the material defines as the ultimate maturity test.
The exact day a person passes from childhood to adulthood.
It isn't a biological milestone. It's not the day you get a mortgage or have a child.
Right. It is the day you assume full, radical responsibility for every single thing that happens to you.
And that is exceptionally rare because our default evolutionary setting is to deflect. We desperately want to protect the ego.
So we build what Jim Rohn referred to as the blame list. And let me tell you, the blame list in the source material is exhaustive.
We all have one.
We do. It's the government. It's the tax code. You know, look what they take, and they still expect me to succeed.
It's the traffic, it's the weather, it's the economy.
It's the company's poorly designed training program. It's always something external.
And the evolutionary psychology of this blame list is actually rooted in tribal survival. Think about it: if you fail, and it is undeniably your fault, you risk being ostracized from the tribe.
Which historically meant death.
Exactly. So your brain fabricates external culprits to maintain your social standing and protect your ego. But in the modern economy, this primitive defense mechanism comes at an exorbitant cost.
It costs you your locus of control.
Precisely. If the economy is the reason your business is failing, you don't have to change your business model. You get to feel righteous and victimized.
But the trade-off is you are entirely powerless until the Federal Reserve decides to lower interest rates. You have literally handed the keys to your life over to an abstract entity.
You have outsourced your agency. And this is where we encounter the defining philosophical pivot of this entire framework.
The realization that, and this is a direct quote, it is not what happens, but rather what you do, that changes everything.
It's not the happenings, it's what you do about it. Because the happenings are universal.
Right. The happenings are shared variables. The tax code applies to millions of people. The traffic jam traps everyone on the highway.
The recession impacts the entire sector. If the external variables are a shared baseline experience, the only remaining differentiator, the only variable you actually control, is your response mechanism.
Okay, but let me push back on this again, because radical responsibility can quickly sound like toxic positivity or just a complete lack of empathy.
Sure, I can see how it sounds that way.
Like, what about profound, unfair tragedy? Someone listening right now is saying, you don't understand the betrayal I endured in my last partnership. You don't understand the chronic health crisis that wiped out my savings.
Or the specific targeted disadvantage they started with.
Exactly. Are we saying those things just don't matter?
No, the framework absolutely doesn't deny the existence of profound tragedy or systemic unfairness. But it ruthlessly points out that disappointments are not special, curated gifts reserved uniquely for you.
Everyone has a quota of suffering.
Exactly. To use the metaphor from the text, it rains on the rich, just as it rains on the poor.
I love that line so much. I used to blame the weather, and then I discovered it rains on the rich.
It forces you to realize that success isn't the absence of rain. Success is the architectural response to the rain.
Right. When the deluge comes, one person stands in the mud and complains about the moisture, waiting for the sky to apologize.
While the other person figures out how to build a cistern, capture the water, and use it to irrigate their crops, the rain was identical. The response dictated the harvest.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that acts as the perfect bridge to the core organizing metaphor of this entire philosophy. We aren't just talking about abstract responsibility here.
No, we are talking about aligning ourselves with inevitable cyclical realities.
Life, economics, and human development operate exactly like the changing seasons. You cannot change the seasons, but you can change yourself to navigate them.
This is where we bridge personal philosophy with macroeconomics. Think about how economies expand, hit a peak, contract, deleverage, and then rebuild.
It is a predictable cycle. And the seasons metaphor takes that cyclical reality and applies it directly to the human experience.
Let's walk through them, starting with lesson 1, the inevitability of winter.
Winter is defined as the season of difficulty, contraction, and hardship. And the absolute most important thing to understand about winter is that it is guaranteed.
It predictably follows the harvest of the fall. It has been the pattern for thousands of years.
But human beings constantly feign surprise when winter arrives. Like, we experience a booming economy or a honeymoon phase in a relationship, and we convince ourselves we have somehow conquered the cycle.
We think it will be summer forever. So when the contraction hits, we completely panic.
And the material is really careful to distinguish between different types of winter. It isn't just about a stock market correction. There are social winters and there are deeply personal winters.
The text describes it so viscerally.
It does. The winter when your heart is smashed into 1,000 pieces. The winter when you are financially decimated.
Or the winter when you are so isolated that your prayers seem to bounce off the ceiling.
Yeah, those are the winters where it feels like the cold is going to be permanent.
But from an ecological perspective, a forest actually needs a harsh winter. It burns off the deadwood. It kills off the parasitic insects that multiply during the summer.
And it forces the root systems of the surviving trees to dig deeper into the bedrock.
A personal winter serves the exact same function. It destroys your weak assumptions, it clears out your fragile relationships, and it forces a reckoning with your foundational skills.
But our natural instinct in winter is just to hibernate. We want to pull the covers up, turn on the television, and just numb out until it gets warm again.
But the mandate here is the exact opposite. You cannot tear January off the calendar. Denying the cold doesn't make you warm.
So what is the strategy?
The strategy for winter is active, aggressive skill acquisition. The mandate is, and this is a key quote, do not wish for fewer problems, wish for more skills. Do not wish for less challenge, wish for more wisdom.
So if you are laid off during an economic winter, you don't spend 6 months wishing the economy would recover so you can get your old, obsolete job back.
Exactly.
Well,
Use the winter to learn a new programming language,
okay.
or master financial modeling, or rebuild your communication skills. You forge your internal value in the cold.
You upgrade the software while the machine is offline, which is critical because surviving the winter is really just the prerequisite for lesson 2, the urgency of spring.
As surely as winter arrives, spring always follows. The ice melts. Opportunity returns.
Spring is that window of opportunity. The economic cycle shifts from contraction to expansion. Capital begins to flow again. People are open to new relationships.
But there is a massive trap hidden in the arrival of spring.
What's the trap? Thinking that because the weather is nice, the work is done.
Precisely. Spring guarantees nothing but a temporary window of fertile soil. The operative phrase in the text is, take advantage.
You must actively plant the seeds of the skills you develop during the winter, and you have to do it quickly because the window is terrifyingly brief.
That brevity is something that really struck me. We tend to operate as if we have an infinite supply of tomorrows.
But the text forces a brutal calculation on us. Life is brief, and you are only handed a handful of springs.
If you quantify a human lifespan by the number of highly productive, capable springs you have available to actually plant your seeds, the number is jarring.
Let's say you're 35 years old. You might have, realistically, 30 highly active springs left before the biological and cognitive winters of old age begin to set in.
30. That is a highly finite resource.
It puts a literal stopwatch on your ambition. You can't just say, well, I'll start building my business next spring, because you are burning one of your 30 remaining tokens.
You must read every book you can, gather every piece of data, and figure out how to maximize the current spring.
Because the alternative is bleak, the choice is pretty much binary. You must get exceptionally good at planting in the spring, or you must get incredibly comfortable begging in the fall.
It removes the illusion of a comfortable middle ground entirely. If you fail to utilize the opportunity of spring, if you were too busy enjoying the warm weather to put your hands in the dirt, you are actively consenting to the poverty of the fall.
You are choosing the luck of a harvest.
Exactly.
Okay, so you feel the urgency, you plant the seeds, you launch the business, you start the health protocol, you commit to the relationship, the seeds are in the ground, now you get to coast. Right. Wrong. And that brings us to lesson 3, the battles of summer.
Summer is the season of protection. It is a war of attrition against entropy.
Entropy is the perfect word for it. Why is it that the moment we start something positive, it feels like the universe immediately conspires to destroy it?
It really does feel personal, doesn't it?
It does. You decide to get healthy, and suddenly every office party has 3 cakes. You decide to save money, and your car transmission explodes.
Because systems in nature naturally degrade toward disorder, unless energy is continuously applied to maintain them. When you plant a garden of value, you are artificially imposing order on a chaotic universe.
You are creating a concentration of resources.
And the moment you do that, the busy bugs and noxious weeds arrive to consume it. The weeds don't need a motivational seminar to grow. They are the default state of the soil.
The intruders are automatic. And the text expands this beyond literal agriculture to every facet of human life. All values must be defended.
If you establish a community value, political value, or a business value, it will be attacked.
Let's apply this to a marriage, just as an example. You meet someone in the spring. You plant the seeds of a relationship. It's beautiful and full of potential.
But if you enter the summer of that relationship and become passive, if you stop communicating, stop dating each other, stop resolving micro-resentments,
the weeds of neglect will choke that relationship to death long before you reach the golden years of the fall.
summer is not a time for vacation. It is a time for vigilant, daily defense of the value you created.
You literally have to act like a guard at the gate of your own life. You are protecting the investment of your spring planting.
And if you survive the battles of summer, you finally arrive at lesson 4, reaping in the fall.
The season of the harvest.
The fall is the season of undeniable mathematical reality. It is the accounting phase of your life.
And the rule for the fall is the most uncompromising part of this entire philosophy, it says. You must learn to reap in the fall without apology if you have done well, and without complaint if you have done poorly.
Because the harvest is the incontrovertible proof of who you became during the previous 3 seasons.
If you used the winter to upgrade your internal software, and you aggressively planted your value in the spring,
And if you ruthlessly defended your focus against the weeds of distraction all summer, your harvest in the fall will be massive.
and the mandate is to accept that success without an ounce of guilt. Do not apologize for the wealth you attracted by becoming an entity capable of holding it.
But the flip side is brutal.
It really is. Because if you spent the winter updating your blame list and complaining about the rain, and if you slept through the brevity of spring,
And let the weeds of complacency overtake your summer, your harvest will be barren, and you are forbidden from complaining.
you cannot blame the weather. The lack of a harvest is a perfectly accurate reflection of your lack of value creation.
It all circles back to the day you pass from childhood to adulthood. The fall harvest strips away the ego's defense mechanisms entirely. It leaves you alone with the results of your own agency.
So we have this massive, sweeping framework. We understand the economics of value, the fallacy of pursuing success, the necessity of absolute responsibility, and the cyclical nature of the seasons.
But philosophical frameworks are useless if they just live in our heads as interesting ideas.
Right. Information without application is just entertainment. The material brings us all crashing down to a single, immediate focal point.
It asks a very direct question.
It asks the question that I want to put directly to you listening to this right now. Starting tomorrow, what are you going to do that will alter the trajectory of your life?
Because if you agree with everything discussed today, but you wake up tomorrow and engage in the exact same behavioral loops, you have wasted your time.
And there is a mathematical certainty to what happens if you choose not to change. The text gives us a foolproof algorithm for predicting the future.
It really does. If you want to know exactly what your next 5 years are going to look like, just look at your last 5 years.
Because the inputs are static. If your internal software remains at the same version, if the value you bring to the marketplace remains flat.
And if your response to the inevitable winters remains defensive, then the outputs cannot deviate. The next 5 years will be an exact repetitive echo of the last 5 years.
You will just be half a decade older running the same obsolete code.
Unless
Unless, that is the pivot point, unless you make a conscious choice tomorrow.
you have the agency to change it all, to change a little, or to change one specific thing, but the action has to initiate immediately.
You have to stop waiting for the external world to magically restructure itself to your benefit and start doing the heavy, invisible work of becoming the person who commands a different result.
You drop the blame list and you pick up the tools of personal construction.
We have covered incredible ground today. We completely redefined how we are compensated, moving away from the illusion of selling time to the reality of upgrading our internal value.
We dismantle the idea of chasing success, replacing it with the concept of building an internal architecture that attracts it.
We confronted the evolutionary comfort of the blame list and traded it for the absolute power of radical responsibility.
And we mapped out the unchangeable seasons of life, using winter to build skills, seizing the brief windows of spring, defending our values against the entropy of summer, and facing our fall harvest with total ownership.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, something that builds directly on the mechanics of the seasons we just explored.
Oh, this is a great point to end on.
If the seasons of life are cyclical and inevitable, and you cannot petition the universe to change the weather, ask yourself right now, which season are you currently standing in, and are you accidentally using the wrong season's tools to try and fix your life?
Are you frantically trying to harvest results when you are clearly in a season that requires quiet internal planting?
Or are you cursing the bitter cold of a personal winter when you should be inside, using the downtime to upgrade your software for the spring?
Identify your season, build your internal hotel, and start doing the work.
We will see you on the next deep dive.